Good morning, everybody. Happy feast day to you. It's the Feast of the Transfiguration of Jesus. It's a great event in the life of the disciple, and for us who understand Jesus closely and deeply, it is a great event and a great experience for us as well. When Jesus had first called Peter and James and John at the seashore, they asked Jesus this question: "Where do you live, Master?" And Jesus had replied, "Come and see." And so they did. For a couple of years now, they have lived with him, listened to his words, saw his actions, and followed his teachings. However, there is an event that is upcoming which would change radically the disciples' understanding of Jesus. Not only of Jesus, but of how God plans to save the world. And that event would be the death of Jesus on the cross. The Transfiguration happens at a very critical time during the ministry of Jesus, in the ministry of Jesus, and perhaps in the life of the disciples too. See, the account of the Transfiguration is found in chapter 17 of Matthew. However, middle of the 16th chapter, Jesus asked his disciples this question: "Who do people say that I am?" The disciples responded to this impromptu survey. But then Jesus asked the question, "And who do you say that I am?" Peter was the one who confessed that Jesus was indeed the Christ. And from then on, Jesus will begin to predict his passion and his death. In fact, immediately after Peter's confession of Jesus being the Messiah, Jesus begins to reveal the manner in which he would die. And he does that 3 times in the Gospel of Matthew. And this brings us to the Transfiguration. The disciples had thus far seen who Jesus was, but there was more. Thus far they had seen Jesus' life. Soon they would see his death. Jesus' brutal death, the sinister prejudice, the tragic betrayal, and the senseless hate that would lead to his death was something that the disciples would not be prepared for. And particularly from understanding him as the Messiah, the way a typical Jew did at the time. The whole concept of a suffering Messiah, the whole idea of a Messiah who would be killed to save the world, this is out of the understanding of the disciples. And so Jesus' death and resurrection and the way in which salvation would be revealed now is very atypical, and the disciples must understand it. So the Transfiguration prepared the disciples for Jesus' suffering and death, and for salvation to be revealed in the way it would be revealed in his life. More importantly, though, because the Transfiguration would reveal the divine identity of Jesus, it would help the disciples to comprehend later that it was indeed the Son of God who was put to death for human redemption. There should be no doubts in their minds that Jesus was indeed God. The experience of the Transfiguration will take them through the grueling days ahead This would introduce a new phase in their lives. However, especially after the death and the resurrection, the disciples would connect whatever is new to the transfiguration and remember that Jesus indeed is the Son of God. Meanwhile, what should they do? They must listen to him. Listen here does not merely mean listen to the words of Jesus, but the example of Jesus. How does Jesus think? How does Jesus talk? How does Jesus act? For their own sake and the sake of the mission that will be entrusted to them, they must listen to Jesus, and it means now that they must truly follow him. Remember, I'm going to take you back to the very first moment that Jesus had called the disciples. He had said, "Follow me." The disciples asked, "Master, where do you live?" Well, you know what? Now they will have to follow Jesus. Listen to him means following Christ in his footsteps. So the practical implications for us today. Folks, the experience that belonged to Peter, James, and John now belongs to all of us. The whole world is invited to the mountain. We are all invited into the divine life. We enter at Mass into communion with the divine life. And today, this morning, we are here on this mountain, which is our mountain of transfiguration today. And Christ is present to us in the same divine way that Jesus was present to the apostles. And so, like them, we fall prostrate. We do homage. We worship. But then we are also all invited to listen to him. We are all invited to follow him. I have a desire, and may it be yours as well, that on the day that I stand face to face with God, God will say to me, "You are my beloved Son, with whom I'm well pleased." The great practical implication for each one of us today is simply this: that because we have followed Jesus, that we are a people who think and talk and act like Jesus. That on the day that all of us see God face to face, it might be said of us, "You are my beloved Son, my beloved daughter, with whom I'm well pleased." Amen.